Welcome to the third week of the Caravan Research webinar. I've had a lot of fun doing this. Uh, like so many things in my life, I am following my curiosity, and we teach people how to be more, do more, get more done with AI, and we are also building an AI first company at Caravan. And so a lot of the things that we share in these webinars are things that we're working on ourselves, and we learn a lot by doing. All right, so just want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Let's get started. So here's how this whole webinar got started. We do EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and as part of that, we have a weekly scorecard, which is how we see how we're doing every week. These are the numbers that we regularly look at to help us try to run our business. Are we on track? And I am in charge of training delivery at Caravan, and that's what happens in the classroom, but it's also all the things that happen before and all the things that happen after a training to put together a good result for our trainers and for our students. And so we had this question of, how do we do a training? And there are about 18 different things we do, kind of high level, that if we do all those things, then that's a quality training for us. And, for our scorecard, I said, well, how can we make sure that to get started that we're hitting at least 80% of the things that we want to do to deliver a good training? All right. And so what you're going to see today is our effort to solve that problem, how we did it, and how we used a number of different tools, but particularly the Managed Agent tool from Claude, which is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. And we also use Notion, which if you haven't seen before, you'll see here. So I'm going to hit you up with the slides, right? We're going to go through it. I'm going to pause every once in a while. I can't see the questions that are coming in the chat like while I'm presenting. So I'll stop every little bit and go over and sort of harvest some questions and answer whatever's on your mind. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it, and I will get around to you as we go. Okay? So when we first started working on this, there were 18 steps in 4 phases, like, before a handoff, before the training, during the training, and after the training. And the first pass of this, 100% of the work is being done by a human. Okay? So this graph's a little misleading. On the left there, right, that should be 0% agent, 100% human. Okay? But the idea is, over time, right, how can we transition this so that every week that goes by, more of the work is being done by an agent? And I don't expect that to ever hit 100%. I mean, certainly what happens in the classroom is 100% human for now, and we plan on it staying that way moving forward, right? But all the operational details that go into putting together a training, we want to push that as far as it can go in getting AI to help. So you have some work that you do, okay? And as we go through this, I'm going to be talking about training delivery for Caravan, but you could be thinking about some set of tasks that you do every day, week, month, quarter that might fit into this model, okay? What I'm going to show you here is a framework for how to think about this that we think applies across a lot of knowledge work. And I'll say for the last year or so, when companies have been talking about forward deployed engineers, so basically sending an engineer into a company to help them build AI, I wondered for a long time what those people were doing. Like, what were they actually building? And I think you'll see today we're going to do this in a very engineering light kind of way. Like, we're going to use a lot of GUI-based tools. To the extent we did have to write any code, like Claude Code wrote it all for us. But it's occurred to me in putting this together that this is a lot of what forward deployed engineers are probably doing out in the world. And so let's just get into it. So there are 4 ideas that go into this. All the way on the right over there is the managed agent, okay? But there are three other pieces that really make this work. And so I'm going to teach you what each one of those are, and then we're going to show them to you. The first one is the spec. You could think about this as the standard, right? So these are the 18 steps that go into doing a training. And there's some elements that go into that spec, right? And we'll review how it's put together, okay? Then there are the actual tasks. So in our world, when someone books a new training, we take the spec and we make a copy of it, right? And now we have 18 tasks that are tied to that particular training that need to get done, okay? So the spec gets translated into real work that needs to be done. There's a worker involved. So this is a Notion worker. We also use Cloudflare workers in our business. These are agents, isn't really exactly the right word. These are little programs that are basically paying attention to what's going on in our Notion database. And when they see something happening, a trigger, something that's important, they're going to pick up that and hand it off to an agent to get the work done. And the worker is going to kind of work back and forth with the agent to get the task done. And then, of course, there's the agent. And this is where a huge amount of the heavy lifting is done. We used Claude Managed Agents for this one. And like a lot of the other experiences across Claude, it's really beautiful that all the skills you've developed, all the MCP servers, all of that work that has gone into the way you work in Claude Cowork or Claude Code or wherever you are in there, it is very, very easy to take all of that and give those same pieces to an agent and have them up and running very quickly. Okay, so we'll look at that. Okay, so let's talk about a spec. A spec, well, it changes quite a bit. You know, every time we do a training, we learn something, right? Maybe we add a step into our process or we change a step, okay? But what you want to see in a spec that's really important is, and this is not the exact copy of the spec, we'll look at the real one in a second in Notion, but what is the task? All right, what's the order of the task? What's the general timing, right? You notice there aren't specific dates on it, right? There aren't specific dates in the spec. They don't get turned into real dates until we turn it into tasks. Who's the owner, right? It's not a specific person, right? It's like the lead trainer's the owner. That doesn't get Brandon's name on it until I actually turn it into a task, okay? And then what's the related component? So you're going to hear us use this word component throughout the talk. You'll see it in Notion. A plugin in Claude can have a bunch of things in it, right? It can have a skill, a subagent, a hook, command, these various like primitives that they've put in there. So if a human or an AI is going to be able to complete an item on here, right, we've decided that it needs to have a skill that it can use that tells it specifically how to do that thing. All right, so when you see related component in here, overwhelmingly these are going to be skills, okay? But we have tied it directly to a skill. All right, so this is what a spec looks like. Whenever we improve a process in any way, we're going to come in here and update the spec. All right. We don't actually work off the spec. So what happens is when we create a new training, when someone books new training with us, we're going to take the spec. There's like a little worker that sits in there. And when there's a new training that gets created, it takes this spec and it copies it into a list of tasks. Okay? So when a training gets booked, we have another database that's just tasks. And so you'll see 18 different rows in there. Now there's a real date in there. There's a person's name next to them. That's the owner. Okay? So don't touch the spec. We've made a copy of it that we're going to use for that training. And importantly, I should have said this in the spec. It's not here in one of the columns, but you'll see this when we go and look in Notion. If you open up the actual page for the spec, there are two really important pieces of information in there. One is, what is the output of that task? task, and how do you verify it? All right, it's going to become really important later when we get AI involved in trying to help us do the work. All right, but you'll see the test task that we do is to send an email to me, and so the output of that is an email that's been sent from Gmail with some characteristics, right? And there'll be a way to tell the agent how to verify it. Okay, you need to like use these tools and go look here, and you need to be able to find something that looks exactly like this kind of thing. All right, so it's very important. All right, so that's the done when definition. This task is done when these things are true. All right, and I skipped over the worker part. Remember I said there is a spec, their task, there's a worker. The worker's not that interesting. We use a Notion worker here. It's the least interesting part of this. There's lots of different ways to instantiate something like that. We're just going to skip over that, and I want you to see the Claude Managed Agents, and we'll open this in a bit. We have 2 agents that run that help with this. One of them does the work, and one of them checks the work. Okay? And so these are fantastic, little easy to set up tools, but we kind of have the work gets checked twice, basically, because the agent that does the work is also going to say whether it thinks it did that successfully or not. And when it says it did it successfully, that's when the reviewer agent is going to come in and take a look at it and try to verify their output and then give a second opinion, basically. All right, so we'll look at this in a bit. Okay. So this stack is really simple. There's nothing that I would say is incredibly custom in this. It says 4 off-the-shelf pieces. There's really 3 things in here. There's Notion. That's where like the specs live, the tasks live, okay? There's the Manage Agents. They have skills, memory, tool calling, all right? We also use Honeycomb, which we covered in our OTel logging webinar a few weeks ago. That lets us look at things like how much did it cost to run this particular agent task, right? Things like that, okay? So it's important when you're setting this kind of stuff up that you create some test cases. It makes it a lot easier to get through this so you're not testing this thing out on real stuff with clients. We have a very simple test that we run, which is just to send me an email, okay? And the idea is you have a task, and there's a little box on it that says needs action. And when you click on that, the executor agent picks it up, right, and uses Superhuman MCP, which is an email service we use, or it uses Google. I don't remember which one we're running now. But it looks it up, it reads the skill that's attached to it, right, and it sends the email, okay? It logs a bunch of stuff in that task page, right? It's either successful or not. If it's successful, it checks the needs review box, okay, and the reviewer picks it up, looks at the output that it's supposed to have and the verification steps, and it goes and looks and tries to see if that thing was actually done right, and it logs all of that, and then it either passes or fails. All right, this is the basic idea. We'll look at this particular one in a second. All right, and we keep track of a couple things in here. When you're asking an AI to get involved, I mean, you want to know at a basic level, like what's its hit rate? Is it successful or not on the turns? Claude Managed Agents keeps a record of every session. All that data is in OTel as well, and some of it gets logged in Notion, okay? We want to know what the efficiency was. So maybe it was successful, but did the agent have to go through a bunch of different attempts to solve the problem? We'd like it to just one-shot it, so to speak, but we're interested in that. We're interested in token spend and the dollars. You know, if we have these 18 training tasks, what is amazing, I think, about what we're setting up is the ability, as we hand things off to an agent, to actually see exactly what it cost to run each piece of the process, right? So if there's a piece of the process where we send out net promoter score surveys after the training, right? How much does it cost for the agent to do that? And so every time, right, we run a training, we're going to get a snapshot of how this thing's doing. Is the agent improving? Is it becoming more efficient? Are we spending more or less money on some of these tasks? Have we added a new task and now the whole spec is more expensive to operate, right? These kind of questions, right? And we also want to know how the reviewer was doing. So how's the executor agent doing? How's the reviewer agent doing, right? Spending and efficiency on both of those, right? There's a world where the executor agent is so good, like maybe the models get that much smarter, the instructions and the skills get that much better that we don't need to do reviews. That's sort of like the experienced employee who, you don't check their work anymore because they've been doing it for however long and they don't make mistakes anymore, right? That kind of thing. Okay. So these are not our actual numbers, okay? We're nowhere near here right now, right? But this was the initial metric that I was interested in. What percent of our training tasks are to spec? And I want to get us over 80%, whether humans do it or not, right? I want at least 80% of our tasks to be not up to our standard, right? The second thing that became very interesting to me in putting this together is I want to start tracking what percentage of the tasks are successfully completed by AI, right? That's that curve where AI is going up and humans are going down. And we will be able to graph this over time, right? Every training we run, every task that we try to do with AI is going to be another data point in this. So we'll have a very clear indication of how we're doing on training delivery. Are we up to spec? And are we increasingly shifting more of that work to AI and trying to push the limit there? Okay. So the idea here is this is a gradual, measurable handoff between humans and the agents, right? Right now the humans are doing all of it. There's some natural limit to what the agent can do, right? But we're going to find out where it is. I think companies are going to want a gradual transition to AI first work. Just like working with people, we need to build trust in these systems. And right now we are absolutely living off vibes. And what we're suggesting here is a framework where companies can see more clearly, are their agents successful? Are they efficient in their operations? Are they cost effective, right? Maybe an agent is really good at doing this thing. It can, one shot it every time, but it costs $12 and a human can do it for $1, right? So again, these are all data points that we're going to collect. But I think that this is this field of AI operations or agent operations. I had a conversation with Peter Inge last week, and we were talking about how, finance is like this whole department in college, and there's 100 different classes you can take. And then when you get out into the world, there's like thousands of different finance jobs you can do. And AI operations feels this big to me, right? It feels like something that it's a whole department in school. And there's probably 100 different classes you can take, right? There's one on hotel logging like we did a few weeks ago. There's one on knowledge management like we did last week. There's one on managed agents, right? All of these are whole textbooks probably. And what you're seeing here at Caravan is we're just trying to write the first chapter of the book because all of this stuff is brand new, all right? So, as I was working through this thing for training delivery, I realized, man, this is a framework. This is not a framework for how to improve our training delivery spec. Man, how can I make sure that Caravan hits 80% across all of our digital knowledge work tasks, right? How can we transition our entire business to being more AI first, right? And have a clear, measurable uh, framework for doing that. So this got me really excited, right? I sat down with the team earlier this week and shared how this was all coming together, and it just really lit everyone up, because I think it's structured in a way where it's going to be very easy to translate this. Very easy is not the right word. It's like very straightforward to translate this to other parts of our work. There's still lots of work to do. Like there are many little details that have to be sorted out to make this system work. But none of it at this point is like a mystery, right? It's like very clear what we need to do, which feels pretty good, right? So right now we're talking about trainings, right? Brandon on our team like has daily, weekly, monthly finance tasks that need to be done, and we're going to tackle those. Robert has a bunch of work related to the website that needs to be done every day. That includes evaluating our ads and all sorts of upstream marketing work. We're going to start working on that. Michael does a lot of account management tasks, right, that have a steady rhythm to them that could be easily translated into a spec and task, sort of on and on and on and on and on. Okay. So again, my earlier comment, what are these four deployed engineers doing at these businesses? They're probably building systems like this, and because these systems do not exist off the shelf. I think that's pretty important to say. I think a lot about what new software needs to be built, and it's been really hard for me over the last few years because so much is changing all the time, and as soon as you think of an idea, your next thought is, well, is this just going to be part of Claude's platform in 6 months? You know, but I think this type of system that we're looking at here today is incredibly powerful, and I'm very curious how it becomes a mass market thing. Sure, we didn't use any like weird custom infrastructure, but we just kind of assembled things that were already there in a novel way. But we still had to build all of this ourselves. This was not something that we just kind of just turned on. All right. So I do, as I was going through this, I had sort of a wish list of things that Claude or OpenAI, where I'd love for them to help us, you know. Every time I sit down and do a piece of work in Claude Code, I'm wondering, what outcome am I getting? I'm starting to wonder, what is the cost for that outcome, right? People ask me, how do I understand the ROI of what I'm doing with AI? Don't really have a good answer for that now, but we're starting to see it some here, that we have actual numbers to put to work. I would love to see if ChatGPT, Codex, all the Claude tools, if there could be tighter integration with a task management tool. Part of the joy of working in Claude Code, if you've been there, right, is you get these agent teams that are building these project plans, and they're handing them off to agents, and they're working the plan. There are some task management, project planning, like primitives in there, but they're there for the AI to use. What I love about what we're doing in Notion is that AI plays really well with Notion, but primarily it's an interface for humans, and so it's easy to see what's going on, okay? We have some other things that are programmatically running over in Cloudflare, and they're very effective, but the visibility is low, right? You have to build all sorts of other tooling to see what's happening, and that can be kind of frustrating, right? So in that vein, right, it'd be great if ChatGPT, Claude, we started seeing more experiences that helped us with this human agent collaboration, right? What things are the humans doing? What things are the AI increasingly doing? If you think about that curve where AI is going up and humans are going down, right? How are the tools actually helping us do that? Right now, they don't help with that in any way, all right? But that's sort of the systems level thinking that we're thinking about, okay? So I'm going to jump over. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to see what questions people have right now, and let's answer a few of those. And then I'm going to get in and show you some things. So let's get off here. I'm going to say stop sharing, And let's look. Yeah. So any questions you have, just toss them in the chat. So Andrew's asking, the worker is non-agentic code that just reacts. That's right. It's just a webhook, right? And that's how it works for now. I can imagine the worker being a little less deterministic. Right now, for a task, you need to check the box that says, hey, I want the AI to try to work on this. I think as we get more confidence, we won't have that at all, right? The tasks will come over. They'll have dates next to them, right? You can imagine the AI starting to say, like, well, today's Tuesday. Like, let me go find the things that need to be done today, and starting to work on them in the order that they're supposed to be worked. You can even imagine a world that's less deterministic than that, where various different AI agents are sort of floating around and they can pick things up and work on them based on some totally other set of criteria. But right now it's extremely deterministic, and this is helping us build confidence in the system, all right? AI is not allowed to just pick up a thing and work on it now, right? Someone needs to go and say, hey, give it a try, and that's where we are for now. We had this question about how do you know the reviewer isn't like cheating, right? And like looking off the executor's work. And right now, the first version of this is set up in a way where it can go read the logs from the executor and sort of cheat and say, we saw it do this early on and we changed some instructions. So like it is instructed not to do this, but it can, right? How does it know that the thing it's done? Well, I don't know. The executor said it's done, so it's probably done, right? The easy fix here is just that the executor logs like don't get passed forward to the reviewer, right? They are kept segregated somewhere else. I started working on that yesterday, and it's a pretty simple fix. But we want the review to be completely independent, right? And so we will harden that up a little bit. That's a great question. That's like one of the first questions one of the partners had. So let's see. How do you balance documenting the processes you're building with actually creating those automated processes? Yeah. Okay. So let me see if I understand the question correctly here. Let me just explain the way I work, and because I was talking about this with our team, and I think I work a little bit differently. So when I sit down in Claude Code to work on something, I either have a skill, like a Claude skill that's going to help me, or I don't, okay? And when I don't, the conversation I am having is, I'll give you a good example. I was working on even this stuff with training, right? I was working on sending out Net Promoter Score surveys after the training, okay? So I sat down and I was like, hey, we don't have a skill for this yet. We're not going to build the skill right now. We're just going to do the process in Claude Code, all right? We're going to work together. You're going to help me get it done, all right? And then at the end, once I've done it successfully, I'm going to say, hey, now let's build a skill. Because what it did is it just watched me do the entire thing, right? And it tried to help me with parts and it messed it up and I corrected it and we collaborated on it together in a way that's totally legible, visible to the AI. And so at the end, there actually isn't really any documentation. The documentation happens very naturally and automatically because you've asked the AI to just look at the conversation, right, and create the documentation, right? And that's really what a skill is. And so if you are working in ChatGPT, Claude Code, Claude Cowork, right? Think of every conversation that you're having as an ability. The output of that isn't just that you got that thing done. It's now that AI watched you get it done and it can write down the skill so they can help you do it next time. All right? The chance that a skill that gets created is just right the first time is like 0. Okay? Just like if I explained to you how to do something and then you went and did it and you showed me what you got, I'd be like, oh, I forgot some things, like it's actually this, right? And so what I want to tack onto this is, let's say the next week I'm trying to send NPS scores again. I'm going to use the skill to do it. We're going to do it together again. And for sure, I'm going to notice all sorts of things that weren't quite what I actually wanted. All right. And so what am I going to do at the end of that conversation? Based on everything we just did, what updates do we need to make to the skill so that we do it better next time? All right. I'm working on a new scorecard metric for our team, which is what percentage of our sessions use a skill. And I want to see that going up over time, right? So if I'm sitting down to do a piece of work that I regularly do, I should have a skill, an accompanying skill that helps me do it. And we're able to go look in our OTel logging now and say, hey, for the work Austin did last week, look at each of the sessions, like all of the sessions he did in Claude Code. Look at all the skills that we have in our plugin marketplace. Like, where are some things that he worked on that we don't currently have skills for that would better support the work he's doing? Okay? So you already have all this visibility. If you have logging turned on, you already have all this visibility into what people are working on. And it's actually very easy to go and sit down with them and say, hey, we went through all the logging. Last week, you did an SEO audit, and we don't have a skill for that. You can actually just have that person go back into Claude and be like, hey, can you pull up the conversation we had about the SEO audit and make a skill, right? So it's not like they need to go and rehash all of that. That conversation's already there, right? And they can go create it, okay? So that's a whole nother set of tooling that needs to be built, which is like an agent that kind of hangs out in a company and finds opportunities to build new skills or improve the ones you have. And if you're familiar with OpenClaw, right, there's another agent out there called Hermes Agent, which is like in that OpenClaw kind of category. It's this always-on kind of agent. And one thing they're selling is that this agent does what I just described. Kind of watches you work and tries to create and improve its own skills as it goes. That's fascinating to me. You don't have anything like that in Claude, Codex, or any of these other tools yet. All right. But I'm sure it's coming. All right. Let's see, Garrett. What's the main factor that made you land on your current stack? Yeah, I know it is hard to kind of... It's hard to... if you go down this path of like, what is the exact right way to put this thing together, it can be very tough. You can get a little stuck. I'm with you. When you see my stack... the piece in it that I think is like kind of a no-brainer to use is the Claude Managed Agent. But we're like deep into Claude, right? We love that. There's a version of that tool that OpenAI has, right? There is a version of that tool that Gemini has, okay? As far as what's going on in Notion, you could kind of do that with any task management tool or like database light tool. I'm thinking like Airtable as an example, or ClickUp, or Monday.com, or one of those things. The reason that we picked Notion is, well, one, we've been using it for a while, and a couple weeks ago they launched a bunch of infrastructure and developer tools, and like a CLI that make it really next level easy for a tool like Claude Code to build things in Notion, right? It can build these workers. It can build these other little agents. It can, right? And so, where like ClickUp, Monday.com, Airtable, those are all kind of like database light tools. Notion is a little bit more than that, right? They just expose a number of primitive ideas. They like have a page, they have a database, they have they have this handful of things. And then the AI it's aware of all of them, and it can assemble them in interesting ways to do whatever needs to be done. There's also an AI that sits in Notion that is fantastic and really good. So all of those things I said might be true for some other platforms. And I don't, spend time in every platform. But yeah. Right, and Asana CLI, right? Exactly, right? So if let me go find it and I'll put it in the chat. This was the Notion announcements from last week, and their CEO was basically saying, you know, we're kind of like an infrastructure company. Sorry, let me share it with you. Am I still sharing my screen? Sorry, I thought I had stopped doing that. Let's see, Notion Dev. Yep. Okay, apparently I just can't copy and paste things into this chat. But if you search the Notion Dev, you'll see their new developer platform announcement. It was very cool. All right. Okay, so let me do a little bit of show and tell. I think it's nice to just see what this stuff actually looks like. And then we'll do another little Q&A at the end, and we will wrap it up, and that'll be the end of the week. Let's get this going. Okay, so I'm going to start over here in Notion. And these are some of our core processes in our business. All right, I'm going to focus on training delivery. And if I open up that database, here's the spec for training delivery. There's a little front matter here, right? Just some helpful things about how we think about what this means for us. But the important steps for this are the spec. Okay, so we have a process database which has all of our specs in it. So if you scroll over here, right, I've filtered this down to training delivery. Okay, this is our training delivery spec. All right, and so what do you have in here? You have the steps that go into this process. So one thing we do is when we have a new training, we create custom training materials for all of our trainings. And so we need to scaffold out those folders and files like in the training repo. All right. And who does that? The trainer, whoever that is, right? When's it done? As soon as the training gets marked as tentative in our system. And what are the components, in this case a skill, that are associated with that? All right, so if I open this up and look, remember there's the output in here. So there's a training folder that exists right here, right? And it has this Claude MD file in it. Like if this task is done successfully, that's true, right? And how do you verify that? Right, you go and look. All right, so this is a very simple verification, okay? This is like V0 of this for us, right? The verification for this could be much more complete, right? These particular subfolders need to exist, and these files need to exist, and all of that, okay? So this can be improved over time, but this is the simple first version, all right? And then here's what the components look like. I want to show you what this looks like. So there's sort of an, we have a Caravan plugins marketplace in GitHub, all right? And anytime somebody ships new code to that repo, it updates this in Notion, right? Just so we have a nice clean version here of all of our plugins, skills, MCP servers, all of that. So here's the Caravan training plugin, right? And if I open it up, that's in the Caravan plugins marketplace. I guess it doesn't tie to the components that way. But here they go, Caravan training, right? So here it is. So here's all the various plugins that are in this thing. And let's go look at this. That one was Caravan training build curriculum, right? That's the skill that we use to do the scaffolding for the folders and files for a training. If I click on here, right, here we go. Like here's the actual skill that does that, right? The name, the description in the front matter, right? All the inputs, all the outputs, okay? So the idea here, if we can come back, is this is the spec. When we want to do this thing, we have the output that's expected, how to verify it, who owns it, when does it need to be done, and what are the components that the human or AI will need to do it. Okay, that's a complete spec. So when we start a new training, this thing gets copied. And so we can come over here. Here are my training tasks, okay? And so, you know, this one is just a test one that we have, but it looks a little different when it comes over here, all right? Instead of saying like 7 days before, right, it may have an actual date associated with it, okay? Instead of saying it's the lead trainer, it has an actual person, okay? But everything else about it is mostly the same, all right? Now, if I come in here, let's see what the actual, right, so this one looks a little different, but it's the same idea. It's done when the following things are true. Here's how you verify it, right? And a couple of other things. So right now, someone needs to come in here and say, I want you to work on this, all right? And let's just go ahead and click that and see what happens, all right? So Andrew asked, you know, how this gets kicked off. There's a little webhook that fires when that gets clicked. We should see the action status turn to in progress. There we go. So that just lets us know the agent has picked it up and it's working on it, all right? If we come over here, you'll see it's probably started to log in the actual task itself. Okay, great. Again, this is very version 1, right? The logging is not very helpful or verbose in the way I'd like it to be, but it's making some tool calls. And at some point, it's going to say that this is done. Okay, great. So we could probably open my email and see that this got sent. Let's see here. Did it actually send it? It sent it to Austin at the caravan.ai. Oh, it's in the drafts. Okay, let's see if it's actually in the drafts. You get to like see the inner workings of my inbox here. It's terrifying. Yeah, I don't see this thing in here. So now I'm wondering, did it actually use the Google instead? Nope, I don't see this thing in here. It looks like it hallucinated. This is wonderful because we had this thing working so well yesterday. So let's see what happened. Okay, great. So what happened while it was working is when it said it was successful, it checked this needs review box in here, and the reviewer picked it up and looked at it. All right, so this is actually working as intended, right? So the reviewer looked in my inbox and said, this is not in there, right? It actually failed it. So I don't like that it said it successfully did this thing when it did not, but the process kind of worked as expected, all right? So we would go in and try to figure out what happened here, okay? But that gives you the general idea of how it works, okay? We would call that a fail, which is fine. This is a learning process. But here's what this looks like on the agent side. So if you go into the developer section of Claude, you can create an agent. Now, I didn't create the agent from here. All right, what I did is I gave Claude Code the managed agent documentation, and I said, let's build some of these, okay? And so I didn't build it from the GUI. I built that in Claude Code. But here you go. Here's the task executor. I have not thought about prompt engineering in a long time, all right? I don't really think about prompt construction much because the way I work with cowork and code is very conversational, okay? But I did actually bust out the documentation from Anthropic on how to write good system prompts, right? So that we could write something that made sense for the system prompt for this agent, okay? But if you scroll down, this thing, we also gave it this MCP server, right? So it could use the superhuman email. All right. So this task executor is probably going to have lots of different tools that it can use, right? If Robert needs this to look at our Google Ads, right, it probably needs the Google Ads MCP server, kind of on and on and on. So we'll have to decide whether we have one task executor agent that can do lots and lots and lots of different things. That may be ideal, or do we need to break it up into a number of different agents? We just don't know the answer to that question until we go and try it, okay? Agents can also share a credential vault up here. So here's one vault that has all of our tokens for various tools. You don't have to recreate that for every agent that you use. So if the executor agent needs superhuman, well, the reviewer agent needs superhuman too, because it needs to do the checking. And so we just have to add it to the vault, and then both of those agents have access to the same tool. Very nice. Okay. And then here are all the sessions, right? So let me refresh this, because here's a session that ran 4 minutes ago, right? And, you know, I'm very curious if we looked in here. Here's where it read the skill, which is great. All right. Here's where it actually did the thing. But remember, it didn't actually complete the task. And here's where it did this other thing. So very curious, like we'd have to get in here, but this would be one of those cases where you would go into Claude Code and you would say, hey, go find these 2 session IDs, right? So you just copy them, right? And then you go to Claude Code and give it to it and say, let's diagnose what happened. Why did this not work? Let's look at the system instructions and the skill that we have, right? And figure out what we need to do to change either one of those, right? So that we get a better result next time. All right, and that's the diagnosis. So when I said this was straightforward, but it actually isn't easy, is there are these little details along the way to actually getting this stuff working effectively in the way you want. Okay? So that's what the Managed Agents platform looks like. And again, it's nice to come in here and be able to see all this stuff in the GUI here, but 100% of this work is done in Claude Code or Codex or wherever you're doing that kind of work. All right? So I think that's probably the gist of it. So a couple things that we're adding in here, which you saw in some of those charts, is we'd love to have some metadata here around how many turns it took to get this thing done, right? So this thing just failed. So we had an executor turn, we had a reviewer turn. Well, what if we try again, right? We make some changes, right? We try again, okay? So I'd love to know how many turns it took. For each of the agents, I'd also love to know how many tokens we'd spent. And for each of the agents, I'd love to know what the actual dollar cost was. Sometimes there is dollar cost because we're using the API. Sometimes it hits the subscription and it's just subsidized tokens, all right? But I would imagine having a record here of every task that the AI did, how many tokens they spent, and how much money was either inferred from that number of tokens, right? Or how much money was actually spent. That at scale would be wild to see in an organization. All right. So let me get back over here to our webinar. And I am going to stop sharing and come back. Okay, cool. yeah, the reviewer earned its place on the team today. Yeah, which is fantastic. Yeah, someone asked me when I was showing them this week, well, do you need the reviewer? I'm like, I think we need the reviewer. Because the reviewer can also be the smartest model. I think that's an important distinction here. Like to send an email for that task we just looked at, we should be able to use Haiku for that, right? If the skill is written appropriately, the smallest, cheapest, dumbest model should be able to do that thing pretty simply, okay? The reviewer in my mind, for now, should always be the smartest thing you can get your hands on, right? It's like the manager here, right? And it's not going to put up with any nonsense like that this other agent is doing. And so that should be the setup. I don't think it's set up like that now. I think the reviewer is probably just on Sonnet, so we should probably bump it up. Okay. But yeah, I'm thinking essentially of agent effort and cost per task. Yeah, that's right. If you think back to, what was going on in like post-war America, like think what Toyota was doing in their factories, manufacturing. I mean, this started with Henry Ford, okay, but it really accelerated, I think, with Toyota. Just all these time and motion studies and this insistence that you could measure quality. You could understand like the unit cost of the work that was being done. You could understand efficiency all the way down at the task level. You just haven't really had that for knowledge work. And now when you get AI involved in doing knowledge work tasks, you have that same level of visibility that you would have on a factory floor. And so this actually this is exactly what I'm getting at when I said this is a whole department at a university with 100 classes where each one's a textbook. There really is that much work, I think, to discover here and do. And if it's not obvious yet, like what I'm describing are jobs of the future. I think there's just going to be an enormous amount of work that needs to be done along these lines. And that's kind of been the theme, kind of the running theme through these webinars over the past few weeks is like these things I'm presenting are significant pieces of work that will need to be done in organizations. Managing the logging, managing the knowledge management, managing the managed agents, right? Sort of go down the list, and we'll continue to try to find those things. We're discovering them, as we're doing the work ourselves. And we're like, oh, this is a need. Like this should happen this way, or we're fielding questions from customers and discovering things that way. So probably have time for one or two more questions, if there's anything on anyone's minds. Well, all right. This has been fantastic for me. I have a lot of fun doing this work. The video will be out on Monday on YouTube if you want to share or rewatch. And of course, if you have any questions or want to catch up about any of this, just send me a note. And it's been good spending time with y'all. See you soon.